What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and the double hero RB draft strategy is set up to win leagues in 2024 because running backs are going as late as ever. We can see here that on Sleeper, back in 2021, we had 9 running backs going inside of the first round. This year, we have just 4. In 2021, we had 18 running backs going inside of the first 3 rounds. This year, just 12. And what this creates is a really unique opportunity where we can get a running back room that back just a few years ago, we would have never have dreamed of being able to create at the top half of the draft. So today we're going to break down why the double hero RB draft strategy is set up to absolutely smash in 2024. And then we're going to break down how to use it, how to implement it, what settings it's good with, and then also cover 2 mock drafts from 2 different positions at the end of this video. As always, if you enjoyed, make sure down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go. First, let's talk about what double hero RB is. And I would just do a brief outline that double hero RB, I am looking to get 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds. I am not drafting my 3rd running back until round 7 at the absolute earliest. And then my goal should also be to have wide receivers through my flex spot plus 1 or 2 extra by round 10. Now we'll talk about the wide receiver part of the equation, but let's just focus in on the double running back part. And the idea here is that we want to take 2 swings on running back in the first 3 rounds and then get out of there, right? You want to sort of thread the needle, hit on both of the top highest scoring running backs, dominate the rest of your league, and then make sure that you're building a super team around that, not putting your eggs in one basket and double dipping on running back, but then allocating your draft capital to quarterback, tight end, and wide receiver. Now, I do believe that in 2024, double hero RB could be set up to absolutely smash because we are getting running backs that used to get priced in round 1, now available in rounds 2 and 3, and so on and so forth. So we can sort of set up a monster running back room. This is my running backs drafted in the first and then also the first 3 rounds of fantasy drafts by site ADP on ESPN, Yahoo, and Sleeper. And you can see on the left-hand side, in terms of the first round, this year we have about an average of 5 running backs going in the first round. Back in 2021, it was 9, 2022, 7.7, and then 2023, just a little bit more than that. Similar trend can be shown in 2022. Now, instead of just diving right into what double hero RB is, I do want to talk about what happened last year, because you're going to see these charts and say, well, 2023 had a very similar running back environment to 2024. And you would be correct, but double hero RB fell flat last year because we had McCaffrey at the top, making hero RB build super, super strong. But then the issue is that all the running backs next to him flopped, right? Austin Eckler wasn't good. Bijan wasn't great. Pollard wasn't great. Nick Chubb wasn't great either. So it just set up a really weird year where the RB1 crushed. And then the only other running back that hit 20 or more points per game was Kyren Williams, who you picked up off waivers. This is the top 6 running backs in points per game last year. Kyren was off waivers. Kamara was like a 7th round pick. Raheem Mostert was like a 9th, 10th round guy. Same with Achane. And then Breece Hall, a guy that we loved, was the only other running back on this list going inside of the top 6 rounds. And if we look historically, this year, just having 2 running backs over 18 points per game is very uncommon. Even in a world where running back scoring has been down, if we look over the last 5 years at seasons where running backs hit 18 or more points per game, last year just had 2. Before that, we had 3 straight years of 4, and then 2019 we had 7 running backs hit 18 plus points per game. So we should expect this to bounce back in 2024. We should get at least 4 or at least 3 running backs to hit 18 plus points per game. Now, when we talk about double hero RB, in a perfect world, we want those running backs that have 18 plus points per game and are at the top of their position, especially because running back scoring is so rare. If you can get 2 of those guys up top, then you have a scarce asset no one else in your league has. So the way that we're going to adjust for this new environment where running backs are going as late as ever, I took it upon myself to look at where running backs are getting drafted on Sleeper and ESPN, 2 of the most drafted sites out there. And what I did is I found the combined range for what this new environment looks like, right? When you look at ESPN and Sleeper, roughly RB1 through RB6 goes in the first round. Second round, RB5 through 10. Now, there's going to be some overlap here, right? Where first round and second round, the overlap is RB5 and 6, but you're not going to have exactly 4 running backs drafted in the first round in your home league or 4 running backs drafted in the second round. It's just to get an overview of what your leagues will look like. And if we look back over the last 5 years, looking for 18 plus point per game running backs in this new environment where running backs are getting drafted later, we can see what rounds we can find those running backs in in this environment. And these are the 18 plus point per game seasons over the last 5 years. And we can see over 75% of the 18 plus point per game running backs are coming in the first 4 rounds. And that's the whole idea of double hero RB. Most of the good running backs are getting drafted early. As a community, we're actually really good at finding those running backs, and it's why we want to get in early and then get out. And I also want to give a big note on why robust RB is not optimal. I'm trying to put that in the best way I can, and that if you want to go robust RB, you want to draft running back early, you should really do double hero RB, which is kind of a modified version of robust RB. It's just that we're not chasing running backs into rounds 5 and 6 and 7 and ending up with 5 running backs through the first 7 rounds. You're going into a range of running back that usually hasn't yielded good results, right? We only have one running back drafted in rounds 5, 6, 7, and 8 over the last 5 years to give us 18 plus points per game. I believe that was Josh Jacobs. Now, personally, you can see here 18 plus point per game running backs can be found in the first 4 rounds. That's something we can all agree on. But for the definition of double hero RB, I would actually shrink that down just to the first 3 rounds for a couple of reasons here. Now, I will say, if a falling running back gets you in the 4th round, right, you look up in the 4th round and Isaiah Pacheco is somehow there, or Devon Achane is somehow there. Maybe you're in a 10-person league and that happens. Go right ahead. You can feel free, take that falling running back, go right ahead, do what you need to do. But from a broad view, broad perspective, I would say first 3 rounds, because we need to make sure that we understand the risk of these running backs early. The idea here is something that I've mentioned in almost every video. You guys get on me all the time, but it's legendary upside, something coined by Pat Kerrane. And we look at running backs drafted early on. This is by top 24 ADP. So the running backs and wide receivers in top 24 ADP over the last 3 years, running backs get hurt 1.35 times as much as wide receivers. We need to be very mindful of that risk, and that's why, again, we don't want robust RB. We don't need to take on all that risk, and we don't need to chase running backs into the middle rounds where they haven't yielded good results in the past. And the reason I bring up this risk is because we want to shoot for the upside that offsets the risk. And even if we just put it not even at 24 plus points per game, we just put it at 20 plus points per game since 2019, so that's over the last 5 years, we can see that, again, we're really good at spotting these guys. All of them outside of Kyren Williams. So it just highlights how weird last year truly was. Outside of Kyren Williams, every 20 plus point per game running back over the last 5 years has been drafted inside of the top 10 running backs per ADP, which in this new environment would be first and second round, and then maybe they slip to the 3rd round. Now you might say, well, Ron, if there's only going to be 2 or 3 20 plus point per game running backs in a given season, are we going to be able to hit them? And what I would tell you is that, yes, you're threading the needle here, but if you can hit on 2 of the top 3 or 4 point per game running backs, you're in a massive, massive spot, an advantage over your league mates. And you also have to remember, when we're talking about winning a 12-person league, 1 divided by 12, you're talking about a 92nd percentile outcome. That's an 8% chance of winning your league. I would argue you probably have about an 8% chance, maybe even a 5% chance of finding those 2 running backs, getting the correct pairing in the first 2 or 3 rounds. And that's a risk that I'm willing to take in those first 3 rounds. And then I'll also add that if you can find those 2 20-plus point per game running backs in a given season, it makes it that much harder for your league mates to replicate that production off of waivers. Outside of Kyren Williams, again, we don't really see 20-plus point per game guys off of waivers. And even if you don't really buy into the idea of the legendary running back theory, I still think that chasing running backs into round 4 and later isn't a great idea, just because of how much wide receivers have smashed in that area. When we look at wins above replacement, shout out to Destination Devy's wins above replacement machine. They have it over on their website. I'll make sure to link it down below in the comments. We actually did some research on our overall draft strategy video that I'll make sure to link somewhere here, where I looked at this new environment, right? So RBs 1 through 6 in the first round, wide receiver 1 through 8, just kind of a broad overview of what these new prices look like, right? Where we're drafting a lot of wide receivers early, running backs are as cheap as ever. And even still, that round 4 area is a sweet spot for wide receivers, where over the last 5 years, their 1.4 wins above replacement has actually been more than second round and third round receivers. Now, I will give a big fat disclaimer that wins above replacement is just a way of putting every position on an equal playing field and just figuring out how much more value you're getting over a replacement level player. And wide receivers are giving you a massive edge, especially in round 4. So yes, you might get the next 18 plus point per game running back there, but the wide receivers you're passing up on, to me, is too much of an opportunity cost, unless, again, somebody falls. Now, I do want to pull up a success story, right? Last year, we know Double hero RB fell flat because of Kyron Williams, because of Chubb busting, Eckler busting. All of the running backs early, outside of McCaffrey pretty much, were not that great, or at least weren't league winner types. Now, that is a very rare thing to happen, and what's more likely is what we saw happen in 2022, where Pat Kerrane, the creator of the Legendary Upside article, actually won $2 million on Underdog Fantasy. Now, of course, best ball is not your home league, but to me, I think that it shows roster construction really well in terms of how you should be attacking each position, even in a redraft managed league. Now, of course, if you're new to Underdog Fantasy, make sure you check them out. You can draft right there. There's no waiver wire. There's no trades. There's no setting your lineup. You draft your team, and that's it. You can hop on there for the first time and use promo code RON. They'll match your first deposit up to $250. You can mess around with draft strategy, figure out what pockets of the draft you like, and then bring that into your home league, and you'll see there's a ton of values. Where we're going to actually have a video here in the next couple of weeks talking through. Malik Neighbors is going in the second round of Underdog. He's going like the fourth, fifth of your home league, and kind of talk through how we can leverage some of those ADPs. Now, when we talk about this Pat Kerrane team, to me, it is the perfect showing of what a double hero RB league winning team looks like, and something we should be emulating even in our home leagues, because he got the magic pairing. He threaded the needle, Austin Eckler, Saquon Barkley, boom. But I think the thing to really note here is that he did not take his third running back, Ramondre Stevenson, until the 10th round, which is pretty crazy. Throughout the rest of this draft, he makes sure that he got a quarterback in Tom Brady. He got George Kittle before Ramondre. And then Underdog is a 3 wide receiver format, half PPR. He took 5 wide receivers before Ramondre. So he had 3 wide receivers in a flex spot. He actually took a wide receiver on the bench before he took his RB3, right? We took DJ Moore, Jalen Waddle, Chris Godwin, Hunter Renfrow, Tyler Lockett, and it gives you this balanced team where if you don't chase running back and build like a robust RB team, you can still make up ground to the other positions and give yourself a really balanced team that is built correctly. Now, the reason that we want wide receivers in the flex and why he made sure that he got wide receivers in the flex is because generally speaking, in most leagues, you want wide receivers in your flex spot. When we look at the wins above replacement tool over on Destination Devy, they actually use their wins above replacement data and they spit out the optimal league-wide flexes, where in this setup, a 12-team full PPR, 2 wide receiver, 2 flex league, it has, right, so 12 teams, 2 flexes, that's 24 flex spots. It has 18 of 24 flex spots as optimal. That is 75% of your league should be using wide receivers in their flex spot, and it means in a perfect world, you have 2 wide receivers in your flex spot. Now, that obviously goes to without saying that if you can get Kyron Williams off waivers, if you can get Jerome Ford, if you can get Zeke Elliott like last year, if you can get someone drops a Devon Achane, by all means, put those guys in the flex spot. But when we're drafting an optimal team, we want to be drafting with the idea of putting wide receivers in our flex, and we can kind of figure out any additional value from running backs or tight ends off of waivers. Now, you might sit here and say, well, Ron, I'm going to half PPR, 1 flex. Does this also apply? And yes, it does. When we look at 1 flex, half PPR, we still want 9 of those flex spots to be wide receivers, 75%. Again, even in this setup, we want to be optimizing for wide receiver in our flex spot. Now, you might see 2 plus 9 is not 12. I think that's because like it's 2.33, 9.33, 0.34, and it's rounding down on all of them. So how do we make sure that we have enough wide receivers to fill our flex spot and have an optimal lineup in fantasy football? We make sure that we draft wide receivers through the flex plus 1 or 2 by round 10. That has been my golden rule, and it's worked well for me. And you can see here, if you have a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, then you want 4 or 5 wide receivers, right? That would be 2 wide receivers, a flex, and then 1 or 2. 2 wide receivers, 2 flex. That would be 2 wide receivers, 2 flex, 1 or 2, so 5 or 6, and then so on and so forth. So to wrap it all up, before we get to a mock draft at the end here, this is what a perfect double hero RB guideline setup looks like. We want 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds. We do not want to draft our RB3 until round 7 at the absolute earliest, but I'm very much for waiting till like round 9, 10, 11. The goal should be to have enough wide receivers to fill your flex plus 1 or 2 extra by round 10. And then where can you use this strategy? I get that question all the time. Can I use this in my standard league? Can I use this in my half PPR league? And this one, the double hero RB draft strategy, is pretty much universal. And the more that it skews towards running backs, right? So less flex spots, less PPR, like half PPR, standard, points per carry, anything that gives power to the running back makes this strategy even better. In a standard league, it works. Only 1 flex, it works as well. This strategy can be used everywhere, and it's super beginner friendly because it's very straightforward. You take your 2 running backs early, you worry about the rest, and then you tack on some upside running backs later, and boom, you're good to go. Now let's get to the mock draft part of this video. Now our first mock draft here is going to be on Sleeper. It is a 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 2 flex league. And we're going to draft from the 4 spot because to me, this is my ideal double hero RB setup. We get Breece Hall in round 1. We come around, we get Devon Achane in round 2. 2 running backs I think have the upside to finish as like the RB1 overall, or at least the top 5 running back in fantasy. Then we come back around in the 3rd round. You could certainly make a case of like, in some home leagues, you can definitely try and push Devon Achane to that early 3rd area, but one, I didn't want to risk it because Devon Achane's default ranking is like 24, and then also there was nothing else on the board that was all that compelling. So we come back around, we get Nico Collins, who I have as a mid-second on my rankings, which, by the way, if you want access to my rankings, which is what I bring into every single one of my drafts, my high stakes, my home leagues, everything is a top 200 rankings cheat sheet where you can cross off players. They're tiered. I also have the players that I'm targeting and fading outlined in bold, and then also the target rounds I'm targeting each of these players at. And it's set up in a way so that you're not drafting those middle round running backs and chasing them into that dead zone. You're prioritizing the running backs early, and you're prioritizing them later on in round 7 on. To me, if you could only take one thing into a draft, it would be my top 200 rankings, which you can find on patreon.com/Ron Stewart, in the description and at the top of the comment section down below. Now, in the 4th round, we come back around. I'll be honest, Devontae Smith is a pretty heinous value there. If that's not realistic enough for you, just say that I took Tank Dell, which is absolutely fine. Now here, we have both of our wide receiver spots set up very well. We need to worry about the flex. We need to worry about adding wide receiver depth, and then also quarterback and tight end. And we get a gift in the 5th round here. We get Trey McBride. You could have taken one of Andrews, Kincaid, or McBride. We take McBride to set up a Kyler Murray stack later, and just because I have Trey McBride as my tight end 3 personally. Then we come back around in the 6th round. I debated Anthony Richardson very heavily here because I have Richardson as an early 5th. He then fell to the mid-6th here. It was really tough to pass on him, but I felt like we were weak at wide receiver. After Godwin, I had a little bit of a tier break, and then also I knew that Kyler Murray would make it back to us. So we take Godwin, we get Kyler Murray on the way back. I will say you don't have to stack in your home league or your redraft managed leagues, but it's something that I don't mind doing. It's like a bonus. It's not like a necessity, but it doesn't hurt. It puts your quarterback and tight end on the same page, so when McBride scores a touchdown, your quarterback also benefits. Now, after that, we go to the 8-9 turn, and this is where we have our quarterback, tight end, our 2 running backs, and it's time to just hammer wide receivers. So we go Christian Watson, we go JSN, you could take whoever you would like there, whatever your flavor of receiver is. We come back around and we take Curtis Samuel. That gives us wide receivers through the flex, +2, and we're all set and good to go there. Now we can do whatever we want. We take 2 upside swings on running backs, and like, yes, 11th round feels really late for your RB3, but when you draft double hero RB, you draft as if you're right, and as if you threaded the needle that you found the 2 best running backs in fantasy football, because if not, then why play at all? Again, you need a 92nd percentile outcome when you're playing fantasy football, and you might say, well, Ron, what happens if one of them goes down? If one of them goes down, you pray Charbonnet is good, you pray Rico Dowdle is good, and if not, becomes a hero RB team where you're going to get guys off of waivers. You're going to get next year's Jerome Ford, Achane, Zeke Elliott, and just try and churn and burn waivers for that RB2 spot, which ends up happening regardless to a lot of teams as running backs get hurt throughout the season. Then our last pick here, we took Dontavion, which is just a nice last round flyer. That's an upside swing. That's what you want in these builds. A guy like Wicks. You can also go rookie wide receivers, try and find the next Rashee Rice, but those are all good picks. There's no reason in a build like this to take, a Mike Williams. You need somebody that's a much higher upside swing. And here's the final team. And I do like it, right? We have Kyler at quarterback. He's stacked to McBride. Breece and Achane are really good picks there at running back. Then you have Nico, Devontae Smith, Chris Godwin, Christian Watson, JSN, Curtis Samuel, 2 upside waiver wire running backs, and then Dontavion Wicks to cap it all off. To me, in a standard home league setup, I would have no issue with that. And our next mock draft is this. This is the 2nd most popular setup you guys use. I made a poll over on my YouTube for it. It is half PPR, 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and 1 flex. So this is much more skewed towards running back, and then it's also a shallower lineup, so we want to make sure we get a good quarterback and a good tight end. And here, we picked the late part of the 1st round. I will say, I think that something that's fun is if you can get a wacky build where here, like let's say we took Jamar Chase at the 106, and then we came back around, we got Devon Achane, and then we got Pacheco falling as well. That would be pretty fun. Remember, I know both of these are just rounds 1 and 2 running backs, but you can always do like wide receiver, running back, or running back, wide receiver, running back. It just didn't line up in these mock drafts for me to show one of those builds. So with this, we have Jahmyr Gibbs at the 111, and then Kyron Williams at the 202. Two of my favorite running backs to draft this year. And yes, I'm fine with Jahmyr Gibbs, even in a half PPR in the first round. Then we come around to the 3-4 turn, and Cooper Kupp and Malik Neighbors are really good. Maybe if you don't love that in a home league and you think that's unrealistic, you can swap that out with like Neighbors at 311 and then like DK Metcalf at 402. I would still be fine with that. I will say as well, I wanted to do this on a Fantasy Pros draft, but I also went there and it was even worse. Like you could get crazy values. You could get Malik Neighbors in the 5th. You could get George Kittle in the 7th. So I just threw that out. Then at the 5-6 turn, we take T. Higgins, and then we know that one of Kyle Pitts or George Kittle will make it back to us, so then we take Kittle, and then we come back around, and at this point, all we need is a quarterback, and we need to get some wide receiver firepower on the bench. So we go Chris Godwin, and we go Jordan Love. That's good enough for me. Jordan Love in the quarterback spot, that's not a streamer. That's a fine quarterback there. George Kittle's a fine tight end, and we're not behind that wide receiver. Now, in a league like this where it's 2 wide receivers, 1 flex, I don't think you have to go wide receivers through the flex plus 2 through the first 10 rounds. So we actually went back to running back because why not in this format? And we went Brian Robinson and Chase Brown. Brian Robinson's a nice steady guy where if we need to put him in the flex, we can. If we have bye weeks with Jahmyr Gibbs or Kyron Williams or injuries, we can put him in the RB2 spot. And we took Chase Brown as just a massive upside swing where we want to have a chance at finding next year's, Devon Achane, someone that we could put in the flex spot and have like 3 18-plus point per game running backs in this format. And then we just take 2 final swings on Jalen Polk and Dontavion Wicks. It's just upside swings at wide receiver because, again, on my bench, I just want to be prioritizing those turn and burn waiver running back spots and then upside rookie year 2 wide receiver profiles. And this is the final team in this setup, and I think it looks good. We're strong everywhere. There's not really any weaknesses. We have Jordan Love, Jahmyr Gibbs, Kyron Williams, Cooper Kupp, Malik Neighbors, George Kittle, T. Higgins, Chris Godwin, Brian Robinson, Chase Brown, Wicks, and Polk. And I do think in a standard home league draft, whether it's on like ESPN, Sleeper, Yahoo, I think this is very attainable in that format. And I do want to give a big fat disclaimer. Please, please, please. I know a lot of people are not going to make it to this part of the video, but when I do these videos, it is not a public service announcement to force double hero RB draft strategy in your home league. It is just simply one tool in your toolbox. I want to go into my leagues knowing the scoring settings, knowing what strategies might work, right? So my 3 main strategies are double hero RB, zero RB, and hero RB. I'll make sure I cover all 3 of those this offseason. And what I want to do mentally is figure out, can I use 2 of the 3? Can I use all 3 in this league? And then once I know that, I'm just taking the best value that falls to me in the first 3 rounds and then building around that. So maybe my first 3 picks are Breece Hall, then Nico Collins, Devon Achane, which I actually did the other day, and I'll actually show that to you. So I actually drafted this on stream the other day in a $350 live stream draft. I will be honest, I got locked out of quarterback. I ended up having to go like Deshaun, Aaron Rodgers, Drake May. Not pretty there. But outside of that, I think it shows how to stay flexible. I took Breece Hall in round 1, Nico Collins in round 2, and then somehow Devon Achane made it back to me in round 3. And instead of staying firm and saying, no, I'm going to do a hero RB draft strategy here, I decided let's take another running back and switch gears into a double hero RB draft strategy because we took our falling value and we go from there. So I just think it's very important that when we're in these draft rooms, we really want to be mindful of staying flexible, staying water, and having as many tools in your toolbox when it comes to draft strategy and not just forcing one in a given draft, if that makes sense. So this is one of many draft strategy videos we'll have this year, so you can have as many flexible outs in a given draft. As always, I appreciate you guys watching, and I will see y'all in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold.